I feel like in some ways I have traded one set of dogmatic rules for another. If you tell me that I'm gonna belong, I'm your girl. Like I have a
Yeah.
very cult mentality in that way. It's very traumatizing because you don't really feel like you have a choice. You must do this. And it's a fear-based seed that's put in your soul. And then it's sort of like forevermore, you start to collect over time.
Welcome to Amy Liz Harrison's podcast, Eternally Amy, a mum of 8's journey from jail to joy, a Gen Xer who overcame her struggle with alcohol to become a best-selling author and mental health advocate. She shares stories of hope and offers ideas for others struggling with mental health challenges. One thing is for sure, you'll leave with something to chew on. And now, here's your host, Amy Liz Harrison.
Welcome back to Eternally Amy. And this is another exciting episode for me to have Dr. Sarah Michaud on here today, who I have just come to love and adore with my whole heart, who I consider to be such a good friend now. I mean, I feel so blessed to know her. And she's an author. She has a podcast called Leaving Crazy Town. Which, by the way, I meant to tell you, Dr. Sarah, I did listen to the medical one that you and Finn did the other day, and I was dying because I related so much. But anyway, I love you. I'm so glad to have you on. And today we are discussing another Boozeless Book Club. We just kind of threw this together. It's not a form. And anybody who, wants to hang out with us, please do. But this time, we read Many Roads, One Journey, Moving Beyond the 12 Steps. And this is by Charlotte Kasl, which is spelled Kasl, PhD. And she's also the author of Women, Sex, and Addiction, which also sounds good. But I got to tell you, I kind of forced Dr. Sarah into reading this because she mentioned it and I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds so good. I want to read it. And I'll tell you, I loved what it said. I loved the premise, but boy, this was kind of, at first when I started reading it, it was like I was chewing on some beef jerky. I mean, it was meaty, like meaty. Did you kind of feel that way? I mean, I read it before.
It's very dense. I mean, listen, she's talking about patriarchy, sexism, cultures, being a woman, what happens in AA, these different takes about all these different types of sobriety, belief systems. She does a deep dive on the steps. I mean, she goes so deep and dense. She's a real researcher. So yes, you know what I was thinking with you? And I don't know, we haven't talked about your religion, like history or experience or spiritual. And she does towards the end when she talked about her own, like, I can't remember the religion she brought up in, but it was very oppressive and she felt like she'd been, it really affected her in a negative way. And I thought, oh, that's what created this woman who was really rebelling against a lot of stuff. And again, had some great points. I feel a bunch of different ways about it. But I did think about you and geez, did it bring stuff up or did it activate some stuff?
It absolutely did. And I may have mentioned this to you before, but in some ways, at this moment, at almost 15 years of sobriety, I feel like in some ways I have traded one set of dogmatic rules for another. And they're not rules. I'm not trying to, and I want to be clear right off the bat. I absolutely adore 12-step programs. To speak for myself, I adore Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the one that I generally that I've had experience with, and I love I love anything to do with self-improvement. So I just don't want to come across like I'm dissing any organization. I'm not.
Nope.
But what I have found for me is if you tell me that I'm going to belong, I'm your girl. Like I have a
Yeah.
very cult mentality in that way. It's like I would totally be one of those people who fell for like the Nexium sex cult thing, like for sure. I would, because if you tell me I'm gonna be a part of something, I'm in. Like my whole life, I've suffered from that feeling of wanting to be included, feeling different than everyone else.
Yes.
And so I'm the person, I'm the joiner for sure. And so I think what I found so personally fascinating about this book, if I were even just to paint it with a real high level wash, it
Yes.
I loved the idea that like, yeah, I mean, if you're gonna tell me, hey, here's a recipe and here's how you do it and you're going to get a certain result, and like if I'm already emotionally in a space where I am just needing to be held and loved and want to be a part of it, I'm going to do that recipe. Like I'm going to get results. I'm going to get the gold star. Like that's what I want to do. And I did that in church growing up too. And how many Bible studies can I lead? You know, how many scripture verses can I memorize? Blah, blah, blah. Always checking in, especially on my reputation. So that's a woman thing too, or for me at least, that was a female thing. Like, let me prove myself, this kind of stuff. So many meaty topics, packed into this very long book too. I mean, it's not like she shortchanged anybody. I mean, she just went for it,
No.
which I love. But yeah, the religion thing, yeah, that's a whole thing.
Well, and what I think of through the whole book is it's really embracing both and, because
That
I think the trouble with so many programs, whatever program it is, it doesn't matter, is my way is the only way, and
Yeah,
if you don't do it, you're wrong, and you need to do it our way or else you're excluded. And
right.
to me, maybe because I've been around different programs forever, I always thought that when you have rigidity, which she talks about in the end, when you have rigidity and a real attachment to this is it, it's out of fear. And
Yes.
I've had that experience over the years because, like you say, at 15 years of sobriety, at over 40 years of sobriety, believe me, I've done so many other things to help me in my journey. I love AA. It saved my life. I love the 12 steps. And there's lots of other modalities. There are lots of other things that have helped me. There's lots of other ways to look at it. And I will share what worked for me and other things, but I will never tell someone what to do. And I will never shame someone or or ostracize them for not having the same beliefs I do. And I feel like she talked about different slogans or sayings, and a lot of the slogans I love: one day at a time, this too shall pass, live and let live. But some of the things people say in there, I do feel like it perpetuates fear. Like, if you don't go to meetings every day, you're going to drink. Or if you don't do your step 4 within this amount of time, you're going to do this. Or, if, all these things. And I often say to my friends, they're all made up. They're things people have said, and then they become these rules of the community, rather than
Yeah.
encouraging people to think. Now, that's the thing, you're encouraging people to think for themselves, but at the same time, alcoholic thinking is dangerous. So there's so much to it. Go.
I love that you said that, because I'm going to go out on a limb and, share something that, I mean, I talk about this, and look, I speak a couple of languages. I can still speak the church talk because I grew up in it. It was part of my makeup. I was in it, hook, line, and sinker with my entire heart.
Yes.
But for me, when I think one of the biggest, okay, let me put it this way. One of the biggest things that I had to work through in coming out of that church really thick cloud of indoctrination was realizing, you know, I have been told that I can't think for myself and what would happen to me if I did. And
No, no.
so a lot of those things were tied to my afterlife, right? If you,
Got it.
this is the one way that
Yes.
you are going to get to heaven. And so if you don't follow God in this particular way and accept for me it was accept Jesus Christ as your savior, that was a big deal.
Yes.
Then you're going to spend eternity in hell weeping and gnashing of teeth. And it's like, oh my God, when someone
Yeah.
says that to a 7-year-old, like it's very traumatizing because you don't really feel like you have a choice. You must do this. And it's a fear-based seed that's
Yes.
put in your soul. And then it's sort of like forevermore, you start to collect over time these almost like seashells on this beach of like, oh my gosh, now I bear this shame because I did this thing that wasn't biblical, or I doubted God, or my faith wasn't big. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with all this stuff? And really, for me, it ended up just really corroding my sense of self. I didn't know who I was. And I'm not even saying I'm totally healed from this, by the way. I am not. It was very traumatizing, and there are still things that trigger me. Um,
Yes.
and I find it hard to go to a church service right now. I really do. I'm a lot better than I was, because before I would get really just angry and I would have to leave. But there are things that go on for me within the church walls that I just really, I struggle with
Yes.
because I based my whole sense of self-worth on what activities I was doing or not doing. And we were always told that, oh, well, God loves you no matter what, but here's your list of things you don't do. It's called the 10 Commandments. And, so you're constantly living in this like, oh, okay, so don't do this, but God loves me, so do this. And just a lot of things that, were just these like, do I measure up kind of,
Yes.
yeah,
Oh my
kind of.
gosh. No, you have said so much. I mean, the whole structure is
Oh,
patriarchal. That's what she's talking about, right? There's one way to look at these things. You can't think for yourself. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to tell you how. It's not about really developing your own individuality or your own inner resources or power. It's
right.
really about following and what you said was so brilliant. It's like there are all these mixed messages. And I loved how she talked about that, because in AA, I've often laughed at this. It's like they always say, Bill says these are suggestions. So
Yeah.
he's making these suggestions, Bill Wilson, who started AA, but yet throughout the book, even he says it can be spirit of the universe, it can be creative intelligence, but then you read several pages further and it says, within every man and woman, there's the idea of God. I mean, it's like, oh, I thought you just said I could make up what works for me. And
Yeah.
the language around the we, it's all we. Like, this is the way we did it. And again, like, I love Bill W., and I think he was extremely spacious for 1935. I mean, when you read the 12 step in the big book, he's just so spacious. And I do believe, and I often think this when people are so resistant to changing the book or the language and stuff, I think he would be all for it. I mean, it's like transitioning with the times. And that whole thing about 100 men started AA and the one woman killed herself. I mean, that got me because
Mm,
that speaks to, you know, that there are specific things that happen to women that maybe aren't men's experience. And when she describes healing your shame and guilt, developing an ego, I mean, all of the white male businessmen of 1935 needed to reduce their ego and have some humility. But a lot of women developed in codependency and caretaking other people and were self-sacrificing. So women needed to actually get some self-esteem. And
yeah.
so we had different needs. And yeah,
Oh,
yes.
yeah. You're absolutely right. Like I had the same impression of all of that. The biggest part for me that I find to be a struggle right now, when I have a situation come up is that, in the program, the 12-step program, we're taught, to look at ourselves, right?
Yeah.
What have I done in this situation to
Yes.
cause it to, where did I set the ball rolling for these,
Yes.
trains of fear corroded threads
Yeah.
to infiltrate my life? And sometimes it's not me. Like sometimes it's really not. And I think that there is a real disservice that I've done myself over time. And I'm not going to take full responsibility for it, but it's something that the program teaches in terms of, well, it's a spiritual axiom. Every
Yeah.
time I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. And it's like, okay, I see what the bigger point is. I
Yes.
see that
Yes.
they're trying to say that I get to choose my reaction and all of this. I totally get that. But
Yes.
it's also like, not every little tiny thing is my fault. And I think that I have adopted that so much, combined with my church background and now my 12-step experiences, that what I have tried to do, and I love that she addresses this here in the whole
Yes.
chapter, like healthy groups, dysfunctional groups, is that it's like, okay, let me take this back to basics and take what I like and leave the rest. Because sometimes I'll hear stuff where I'm like, yeah, no, that's actually maybe at one time, like when I was very fresh and new in sobriety, I really needed some of these rigid messages to really
Yes.
like, yeah, I mean, I had a lot of wreckage. I had really messed up my life. And,
Yes.
there was some stuff that needed to happen as a result of that. But like, sometimes I just feel like, okay, man, I don't really need to take responsibility for all these things. And now it's more of a question of, all right, so what can I do? Being that I know I can't change somebody else. And in a lot of cases, I can't change a circumstance or a situation. Sometimes I can control what I can control and let the chips fall where they may. But
Yes.
a lot of these life things I don't get very much of a say in, and I can't internalize that and take
Yes.
that on as, oh, this is all my fault.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is such a sticking point when I'm at meetings and there's like this dismissing of what's happened. And I always say to people when we're doing fourth steps or 10 steps or whatever, again, it's the both and. Both are true.
Yes.
Like, yes,
Yeah.
I'm responsible for my life now and how I respond. And a lot of bad shit happened. And
Yeah.
a lot of stuff is happening now. I mean, things are happening. My kid might be bullied or what. And so it's like there needs to be room for all of it and to process the feelings around it. I mean, sometimes that whole thing, and this is where we get into the anger piece, this whole idea of, resentment is the number one offender. I get it. And it's really for women, a lot of times, it's the underlying fear or it's the shame or the guilt or the powerlessness or the grief or whatever. I mean, yes, it does manifest for anger and for a bunch of people. And for women, just acknowledging being angry can be scary. So for some women, getting in touch with resentment and their feelings about a particular issue is something they need to do to get the energy flowing and not to get stuck in it. I'm not saying to get stuck in it, because ultimately, yes, we need to resolve our anger, because otherwise that is going to fuel our desires to act out in some way, whether it's drinking or something else. But we can't just like have something happen and then someone says, hey, well, what's your part? Well, yeah, I know I have to resolve it. I don't want to hold on to it. And this is what happened. This person, blah, blah, blah. There needs to be kind of space for it all. So, yes, I agree. And, I love in her steps. So in this book, Amy and I are talking about It's Many Roads, One Journey, and she has 16 steps. And some I had different feelings about, but those latter steps, like 10 through 16, and she also talks a lot about not owning what someone else did. Like, let's see.
Yes.
We examine our beliefs, addictions, and dependent behavior in the context of a hierarchical, patriarchal culture. We share with another person in the universe all those things inside of us which promote guilt and shame. And we become willing to let go of shame, guilt, and any behavior that keeps us from loving ourselves. But at one point, she says, we affirm we have the power to take charge of our lives and stop being dependent on substances for other people for our self-esteem and security. And she says at one point, we also don't take responsibility for other people's stuff. I can't remember where that is, but that is somewhere. Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, the 11, we promptly acknowledge our mistakes and make amends when appropriate, but we do not say we are sorry for things we have not done. And we do not cover up, analyze, or take responsibility for the shortcomings of others. I mean, she really integrates codependency recovery into these steps.
Yes, which is exactly what I wanted to ask you about, since you are the codependency queen in my mind. I just thought that was so fascinating because
Yes.
if I were to be totally honest, and I'm going to be, I
Yes.
look at how much of the fabric of my life is still
Yes.
wrapped around or loosely connected to in some way, some level of codependency. And there is a lot. There is a lot. And I think it has been sort of really baked into me. And I mean, I'm glad I can see that and recognize it. But oh my goodness. I mean, this part was just powerful to me. Like,
Yes.
again, she mentions fear, right? The underlying emotion is fear, feeling, I guess she says, the terror of emptiness within, fear of being alone, fear of responsibility, and the fear of not being able to take care of oneself. Oh my gosh. That's like she's been reading my mail because I've been thinking about this as I've aged and am aging into the second part of my life. And thinking about, we were just talking, Dr. Sarah and I, about tech before we got to recording. And it's like there are so many things in my life that as a 49-year-old, I cannot do easily because of the generation I was raised in. I can do a lot of stuff, a lot. But then there are some things where I'm constantly needing to ask for help. And so, and that's okay. But it does also, I've realized it brings out this really weird spirit of fear in me. Like, oh my gosh, well, I won't be able to turn on my lights, or I won't be able to work the TV, or I won't be able to whatever. And it's like this whole fear of being alone does actually, like, I give it some rent space in my brain more than I'd like. And I just find it interesting because I did not, this was like a sneaky covert codependency that I didn't even realize was really there until
Yes.
kind of recently, within the past like 18 months or so, where I was just like, yeah, I can see now, why my grandparents were so upset when they couldn't drive anymore and they couldn't, just a loss of independence or a realization that,
Yes.
they weren't independent anymore or as much as they once were. And it's all
Yes.
scary to me a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you've said so many different things and all brilliant. And you're right. What I've been thinking about, and I just turned 66. So I've been thinking a lot lately. So much of aging is adaptation because we're constantly adapting to what's new, especially with the pace of technology. But I've been thinking about my dad lately, who I have this memory, and I probably was asking my son how to send something. And I had this memory when my dad was in assisted living and he was probably 90. And I was trying to teach him how to send an email
Mm.
and how frustrating it was for him and how it was such this bizarre, complex thing. And I'm thinking, Dad, it's so easy, which is what my son does to me. He'll literally take the computer when I'll ask him and say, let me just do it. And I get that. And I remember bringing my dad his first cell phone and him looking at it like, and I can have so much compassion because we're constantly needing to learn something new. And it's strange because I think when you're in development, I think you often get to this place of feeling pretty comfortable of knowing the world and things are kind of predictable. But then I think with how things are evolving and the pace now with the internet and technology, it's not like it used to be. There's just so much newness. And you're absolutely right. It taps into that fear of, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be more dependent on people? Am I going to be safe? I swear so much of what we want is, how am I going to feel safe, right? So I
Yes.
totally get it. And the other thing you mentioned about the codependency being in your fabric, like I wrote my dissertation on the differences between male and female early development. And the fact is, women, in theory, most of the theorists say this, develop in relationship. So as we're babies and young toddlers, we develop in connection with others. And boys develop more in autonomy. They almost develop in separation. It's not that they don't connect, but it's much different. And I really feel so much of our development is around connection. And, they've done studies where little boys and little girls get together and the little boys are running around and the little girls are sitting, connecting and talking. I mean, this is like 4 or 5 years old. So we are different in that way. And I do think it is this setup for codependency and putting other people's feelings and thoughts before ours. It's just how we relate to people, and it's all on this continuum, right? It's fine if both of our needs are getting met, but it's when it gets into the extreme where it becomes more of a pathology, like we can't express a need, we can't speak up for ourselves. And then we build the rage and the anxiety. So it is on a continuum, but it requires practice.
Yes. I
Absolutely.
I love that you said that. Thank you for sharing all that because it actually helps put so much in context too, because some of the systems, like for example, the patriarchal system that I was raised in,
Yes.
you're taught from a very young age, right? That um there are certain things that are sort of for men and there are certain things that are for women. And generally that was sort of your domestic traditional
Yeah.
roles, for example, or teaching in the church. That was a big, big deal, female teachers. Nope, couldn't do that. Couldn't, do you know, there was all
Yes.
these kind of messed up things. And unfortunately, today, even in 2025, you see those remnants hanging around in some of the circles that I find myself in, where it's like, I, if I am going to contact my kid's school, for example, about an issue, I have now learned, and I realize I'm not with you one-on-one. This is a podcast episode, but I'm going to share it.
Please, go ahead.
That I have realized I need my husband to write the email, because now this is a religious school, by the way. So
Okay.
let me say that. So there's also a whole other sidebar to that. Like, that's been hard for me sending my kids to the same system that I was raised in. So we do a lot of talking about that. But anyway, so if we have an issue, I have him send the email, because he tends to get a response, a more complete response, a quicker response, and a response that I would consider more successful, quote unquote. And at first I was really upset about that. And it still does bother me. I'm not going to say it doesn't. I don't think it's right. However, I have just learned to pick my battles, right? Like, how important is this, right? And really, it has inadvertently helped him become more involved with the school and really see kind of what I went through as a BTA president, and trying to, connect with some folks. And I'm not saying it's any of their fault. I'm saying this was the system. This is
the system.
And so, that's been really difficult to see that still exists. And of course, outside the barriers of my little world, and into the greater existence of all of these different challenges as a society that we see still exists with this patriarchal mentality. And it just makes me think, like, gosh, what am I contributing to? And yeah, it's just a real chance for self-reflection for me. Yeah, and I don't even know where I was going with that one.
No, but you know what? You're absolutely right. The fact is, there's truth to a patriarchal culture existing.
Right.
So how can we maneuver and negotiate and function within this system in an empowering way? And sometimes I've done the same thing. I mean, I know that I've gone to a mechanic or something at different times and felt like they're totally dismissing me, and also feeling like they're robbing me.
Yeah.
And I've had my boyfriend call, and it's just shocking but it is truth. I mean, I think there was, oh God, what was it? It was one of those oil change places, and it all came out that they were either charging women more or something. So, I mean, it does exist.
Yeah.
And so how do we navigate in that world without being enraged? And that's the piece that I find. I think this is now going to be my side that rebels against the whole feminist piece. And by the way, I was like it was actually a triple major: psychology, sociology, and feminist studies. So it's such a huge part of who I am. And one piece that I can't jump on board with is, and again, this is on a continuum, is the anger. Like, my son, who's 24, was dating this woman, and she was from this super liberal college, and like, she was a feminist, and she was, she was reading all the books. Like, I felt like, oh my God, this is how I was in college. But she was also angry all the time. And so my thing is, I definitely, when I started realizing about how the cultures had to go through this phase of being angry a lot, but I also know that pointing the finger and blaming without kind of being responsible doesn't get me anywhere either. Like, I don't know if you read that book, Drink Like a Woman or Quit Like a Woman.
Oh, yeah.
Holly Whitaker. And I'm
Yes.
sure she's lovely, but I just felt like the whole book was her in a rage.
Mhm.
And again, unlike Charlotte Kasl, who's talking about very similar themes of
Yeah.
patriarchy, but I didn't feel like she was acting out her own rage in the book. And with Holly's book, I really felt like it was blaming and this is the way it is. And that is not going to get me anywhere. So, and I've had big talks with my son about this. It's like if someone wants to be heard, I don't think being in a rage is a way to be heard. So
No.
I don't know. Like I know I have to like the other thing is I grew up with four brothers and an alcoholic mother and dad, and definitely I experienced sexism. I mean, I was the one that cleared the dinner table. I was the one that did the dishes. My brothers weren't doing that. So I mean, it was just how it was. And yet I also have a lot of compassion for men. I mean, I think men have their own, I remember my son saying, we were reading this list of kind of expectations of boys. And he gave this example of being in a class, and this is back in the old days, and a TV or a video would be wheeled in and something would go wrong. And immediately the teacher would look at the front row and the boy in the front row and assume he knew how to fix it. And
Mhm.
this idea that, like, oh, because you're a boy, you know how to do certain things. And if you're a girl, you know how to do certain things. And hopefully that's shifting, but, may not be. So I have compassion for both genders. Obviously, women experience more sexism, I think. But, anyways, I'm on a rant. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, I think it's important and it's so, so good. And I think my greatest challenge really is to know how to handle those situations when they come up because I really do not feel empowered to
Yes.
to to handle those situations. And I guess what I mean by that is I feel like I have so many tools
Yes.
um, at my disposal. And a lot of it, right, is, oh, well, maybe that person who said that, that guy who said that to you, had no idea that wasn't his intention, right? We're always, trying to like,
You dismiss and
right.
rationalize. Yes.
And when and so I generally try and handle things that way. But then there are other times where it's like, yeah, no. And I think a lot of the times about, dear friends of mine who are single moms and like, what do they say in these situations when a plumber is coming over and is talking down to her and being condescending and, well, you did this or didn't do this right, or your last plumber messed this up and you're going to have to pay this. And like, and how do you have a productive conversation
Yes.
and be assertive and be kind, but
Yes.
also not be walked on and
Yes.
and not standing there accusing someone of like you're being
Yes.
your patriarchy is showing, or I don't
Absolutely.
know. And so that's like I know a whole other thing, but that I find really difficult. And how
I
do I
will
teach
go
my
ahead.
daughters those things if I'm not?
Yes. Right. I think the good thing is, and what my first thought with that was, I think the trouble oftentimes with speaking up in those situations is we're in a situation and a man says something, say a plumber's here and says something. I have this activation in my body of fear.
Mm,
I think it's very unconscious, but I think because we grew up in this, you had church stuff. I had my dad who was really angry and controlling. So I'm going to have an activation inside, and it's going to, my coping skill was always to push it down, be nice, people please, try to,
yeah,
negotiate the situation. So, it's hard at first because I think we have to heal that old rage from the past and the fear, because the plumber isn't my church pastor, the plumber isn't
right.
my dad, but the feeling inside is similar to the early experiences. So I think at first it's just really hard, especially if you're alone. And, because then there's like literally the biological safety thing of,
Right.
our reptilian brains going, are we safe? I mean, I think that's a real thing. So you're right. I always say it requires practice and also, like you're saying, it's just like with codependency recovery. The first thing is always, what do I need? What do I want? What do I feel? What do I think? And then how can I communicate it? And it's always practicing it in less threatening situations. I always say, if you get the coffee wrong at the Starbucks, see if you can ask the person to make your coffee right. But what'll happen is you'll say, "Oh, it's okay. I don't care. They're busy." But that's where you start practicing in these smaller arenas. So then when you're in a bigger arena or a scarier arena, you can speak up. But yes,
So good.
yeah,
That is just so good. And I mean, how many times have I been that person to like, oh, I don't want to be a pain,
yes,
and then if you have other stuff going on too, like, I've got ADHD, so I'm really used to masking and like all
right.
that and just all the different issues that come along with it. But you're so right. It's like almost like the representation of,
Yes,
you know, so it could be the plumber, but it's not the plumber. It's all these
right.
old tapes and
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah. And then how am I also contributing to it by saying, well, I'll have my husband send the email instead of, well,
right,
I'm going to take responsibility and send the email because
right,
I need the practice in not letting some of these things,
right.
trigger me and intimidate me. And
Yes,
also, I need the practice in detaching from the outcome instead of
yeah,
just going, oh, see, yep, they said no again. Yep,
right,
figures.
right.
Do you know what I mean? And then keeping receipts.
Yes, and it's all the boundary stuff and respecting ourselves and having compassion for ourselves that sometimes we're going to have the bandwidth to take more action and speak up and set a boundary, and sometimes we're not. Sometimes you're going to be exhausted and you're going to be like, "Look, I just need my husband to send the email tonight." I mean,
Yeah.
it's not all or nothing. It's really taking
Yes.
baby steps, yeah, in arenas that you can. Yes.
That's so good because thanks for saying that because in the beginning of this too, you were saying, and I love this. This is like the whole thing, right? Is the yes and. Like it's the
Yeah.
yes and. Like, and that is something that was very foreign to me growing up. Things were either right or wrong, black or white, right? And so the whole idea that two things can be true at the same time, I completely believe now for sure. But boy, that's not quite muscle memory yet,
I'm not.
I'm still
Um,
working on reminding myself of that because you
yes. I have to tell you an amazing, I know we're going to run out of time, but let me just
no,
throw
go.
this. I got to tell you this, Bruce. So I'm taking this course on Wednesday nights on deactivation and, the fight, flight, freeze, fawning, our physiological responses to trauma or just life. We can have activation. So I'm taking this course with this woman. And she's talking about coping tools and skills but she gave this example and this just blew my mind and I think you'll like this. So there's a guy on YouTube who was an engineer and his friends for his birthday gave him a bicycle where they're all engineers, where they changed the handlebars so if he turned one way, the wheel would go in another direction. So, right? So it was all about how long was it going to take him to figure out. So we all grow up riding bikes. And so basically, when he first got on it, he thought to himself, well, this is going to be easy to learn. And he said he's traveled around the country with this bike. Everybody that hears the story says, oh, I can do it. And nobody can do it Nobody can do it, okay? They think, oh, I'll practice for a few minutes. It took him 8 months to
Wow.
build new neural pathways in his brain because he had, and so there's neuroplasticity. We can learn how to do something, but think about that. You have this thing that you've learned as a kid, whatever it is. Girls are not as valuable as boys. And it's going to require lots of practicing doing the opposite to start really believing it. And it was fascinating to me because he said that it took 8 months, right? So then he goes to England on a trip and he needed to rent a bicycle. And of course, what happens? He's renting a real bicycle and he couldn't ride it. Right? But it only took 30 minutes to go back to the old way. So that whole thing just like made me really, it's just such a powerful experiment about when we have these old neural pathways, they require a lot of practice to change. And yet it's so easy to go back to the old pathways. So it's just like really to give ourselves some grace and compassion. And it's baby steps and it's teaching your kids and it's teaching my son. I mean, I can honestly say my son is a feminist and because I brought him up to value women and we can change things. It just may take time. But it was a powerful experiment that she talked about. And what's really interesting is his kid, who was like 7 years old. It only took, I think, 2 months. So, or no, 3 weeks to learn the bike. So when you're a child, the grooves are not as deep. So you can teach children much easier than after being 50 years old or 60 years old. So yeah, I'm sure you're doing a great job. And I just wanted to say that because it is hard work, but it's totally worth it, and have some grace.
I love you. That is
I
awesome.
love you.
Whatever.
And yeah, so wrapping up, I just want to say to folks too, Charlotte Kasl wrote that other book, Women, Sex, and Power. And we're not going to read that for next time. I don't want you to think, oh my God. But I want to say for anybody who struggles with codependency or sexual acting out, especially in early recovery, that book was my Bible for like the first 5 years of my recovery. So that's another very powerful book. So I'm just putting a 2 cents in for that.
I'm so glad you did.
Yeah.
And I can't figure out like a better way to end because the truth is we could never end. We could just keep talking.
You can talk forever.
Yeah, it would be like, midnight before we'd be like, well, should we take a break? But
also say, hey, if anybody has any ideas for recovery books or mental health books or self-help books, throw it in the chat of the YouTube or send whatever you do. Here we go with the technology. When this comes out, send us some recommendations. We'd be happy to take recommendations.
yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And Dr. Sarah Michaud, I love you, my friend.
I love you so much.
So much. Oh, yeah,
the book is great for anybody trying to find different journeys in recovery. Just lastly, one quick thing. So this reminded me of the woman I interviewed who wrote From Junkie to Judge. And she said when she went to AA, she said what was so hard for her is that because everybody said to her, this is the only way, she almost felt like she had no hope because she wasn't identifying because she didn't have a higher power. And she said it really contributes to people's hopelessness when you don't give them other options. And it took her a while to be able to find what worked for her. And so just what works for some people doesn't work for others, but keep trying. Yeah.
That's such an important thing to say. And I'm so glad you said that because I totally didn't even talk about that. But I want to say real quick on that note too, is I wholeheartedly agree. And, a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, like AA doesn't work. And then someone else will say, well, that's because they haven't surrendered and they didn't
Right.
steps. And there's like excuses and chatter for like everything
Yes.
that like didn't work for somebody else. Oh, let's dissect
Yes.
that. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like,
Yes.
don't even go there. Like, that's what I have
Yes.
actually personally learned is don't even go there. You don't know
Yes.
anything about their situation or what they're going through. And many, there are so many roads. There's so many paths.
How many roads?
No,
Right.
and we don't know what works for one person may not work at all for somebody else.
Yes.
And we're so unique as individuals. And, I think we do ourselves a disservice if we just lump ourselves into one basket and like, this
Yes.
is the only way. And, it's
Yes.
not healthy, I think.
Right.
But
Absolutely. And she talks about a lot of people getting sober. I mean, I think I've mentioned this. My brother has the same amount of sobriety I have. He went to therapy. He does, he did some men's groups, but he's never done AA and he's got a great life. So, I mean, everybody's different.
everyone's different. My best friend is the same.
Yes.
Never went to any meetings beyond 90 days, and
Yes.
she did therapy as well instead. After that, switched gears, did something else.
It's something else. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw. Well,
Love
thank
you.
you so
All
much.
right.
Love you so much, and thank you for listening. Be kind, rewind, take what you like, and leave the rest behind.